sitting here today with Jennifer Pikoos, who is the practice director for TurningPoint Human Resources, and we're chatting about a lot of different aspects of HR leadership and all that's going on in the broader business community out there right now, especially. So Jennifer, I'm curious about your thoughts around this quote unquote phrase that you always hear, being a strategic HR leader. So I guess my first question, main question is, what does that mean, and how can somebody build a more strategic career, whether it's HR or any other function?
Yeah, no, thanks, Ken, so much. I really appreciate the opportunity to sit down together and talk through some things that are so important in the market right now as a whole, and really in every industry. So I think when you hear the word strategic HR leader, it's similar to how you might hear strategic other types of leaders in an organization. And that might be a little bit personal for each individual leader, what that might mean for them. For me, I think strategic HR sort of has two pathways that might come together at times, that might be very disparate at times, but really you have the part of what people might assume about HR, right? So you have a lot of the components of building a foundation of an HR function, supporting an organization. Nobody in an organization wants to have to worry about payroll, their pay, their benefits, different types of things that are just assumed that are going to always work well. Those don't always work well in an organization. I've seen this firsthand many times. And so you really do have to ensure that those types of things, even though they might not be considered strategic HR, that those types of things are handled very well, and really without error. And nobody wants to have errors in those areas. But then you have the other part of it where HR becomes a true partner, a true component of running a business. And in order to run a business, you have to understand the business you're in. You have to have that business acumen relative to that industry. We talked before about the financial component and making sure you understand, how does a business make money? How do they lose money? And to be strategic in running an HR function and to have the ability to build upon really important, build upon that foundation, but important programs around engagement, learning and development, executive coaching, recognition, so many different areas that people might consider nice to have, but really do encapsulate what it means to be a strategic HR leader and to keep people wanting to remain at a company to support them, even when things aren't so great, like we just experienced 3 years in a pandemic. It was very difficult for a lot of people to maintain a level of connection. But if the HR leader, the HR function is able to work in a very, sort of strategic way to create that and not just keep the wheels on the bus. We used to say that a lot, keep the wheels on the bus. During the pandemic, it was way bigger than keeping the wheels on the bus, but that was imperative. So you really, for me, to be a strategic HR leader, you have to really be thinking concurrently about both of these pathways and where it makes sense that they come together, and then where it makes sense that they're being dealt with on a very unique basis.
I'm curious. I mean, because you started off your career obviously in what was then big six, now big four,
You're dating
accounting
me.
firm, and exactly back at Deloitte. So you always had that kind of oversight, compliance, auditor,
Right.
detailed mindset from the beginning. But as you got into HR, do you remember, did somebody kind of give you a chance and an opportunity to move into more HR activity that let you become more strategic? Or was it you driving that and asking questions? Hey, what can I do to do these things, knowing that would give you a broader mindset and that would eventually translate into being a more strategic HR leader long term?
That's a very good question. So I really do think it's a little bit of both. Growing up as an accountant, as an auditor early on in my career, attention to detail, making sure what I present to anybody, whether it's a CEO, a CFO, my partner boss at Deloitte and Touche, it was my reputation on the line. So it was very, very important that it was accurate and that I paid attention to that detail. That is something that I focused in on right away from an HR perspective. For example, when you have somebody that's coming in and applying for a job, and you look at their CV, their resume, however they're presenting their background to you, and right away you see grammatical errors or spelling errors, that's an attention to detail that maybe not everybody has. I have it because that was how I grew up in my career initially. So those things are very important. And to this day, despite, being in HR for over 20 years, that is something that I focus in on a lot. When I'm have new team members, when I'm running a department, an HR department for an organization, the attention to detail and the importance of that, because it's the first thing that people see, and what you do is critical. But then I also am a big learner. I think a lot of us in HR or any kind of related field have to be big learners. They want to learn a lot. They're soaking stuff up all the time. So we ask a lot of questions. We want to understand what's going on. Sometimes in my career that has been referred to as micromanagement, and I really try to steer away from that term because I like to learn. And so, I ask a lot of questions, and people might make the wrong assumption. But I think the only way that you can really understand what an organization needs from a strategic HR perspective is to ask, and then really listen to the answers to those questions, because you might ask something very simplistic and then ultimately get a wealth of information from the person you're talking to without them even realizing that what they're providing are these really golden opportunities to make things so much better and more effective for the organization, and sometimes even just more fun and engaging and joyful. We all want to go to work and feel joy. It's tough sometimes, and sometimes we don't feel that way. But if we can do things as an organization, as a leadership team as a whole, not just HR, to create that, then that's really important. So I think it really takes both.